the toast of the town, the taste of poison. They say the biggest lies are the ones you tell yourself. For me, that lie was woven into the fabric of my life, a rich, tightly stitched tapestry of success, family legacy, and a name that commanded respect. I remember the champagne glasses clinking. It wasn't just a dinner, it was the formal launch of the Sterling-Atherton Foundation, the culmination of my career, the validation of my family's supposed 7 generations of clean American wealth. We had the governor, the city's top philanthropists, and my entire extended family, the Sterlings, all there. My wife, Eleanor, was beside me, radiant in a sapphire dress, the perfect picture of a supportive partner. I was giving my final, heartfelt thank you, the words flowing like the expensive single malt we were serving, when Eleanor gently took the microphone from my hand. "Before we raise this final toast," she said, her voice clear, amplified, and dripping with an unnerving, almost theatrical sweetness, "there's one small detail about Richard Sterling's heritage that he hasn't quite shared yet." My blood didn't just run cold, it froze, splintering my composure. I knew, instantly, what she was about to do. I'd spent 35 years ensuring no one ever knew, and now my wife, the woman who swore for better or for worse, was about to use it as a weapon in front of every single person who mattered. This wasn't just betrayal. This was a tactical nuclear strike on my entire identity. The next 48 hours would be a blur of high-stakes panic, legal maneuvers, and the slow, agonizing realization that I had fundamentally misjudged the woman sleeping next to me. You need to understand the Sterling name. It's what allowed me to skip the entry-level grind. It's the reason banks were quick to lend, and doors swung open effortlessly. I cultivated the image, Ivy League education, bespoke suits, and the quiet assurance of a man born to lead. I was, by all accounts, a pillar of the community, a self-made man who simply had a very solid foundation. Eleanor was the perfect complement. A brilliant corporate lawyer, sharp, ambitious, and possessing a social grace that polished my more reserved nature. We met during a merger negotiation. The spark wasn't love at first sight, but mutual respect for ruthless efficiency. Our marriage was a strategic partnership. We built an empire, bought the $5 million brownstone in the city, and leased the summer home in the Hamptons. We were the definitive power couple. Our life was meticulous, planned, and frankly, boringly perfect. Our prenuptial agreement was the single most intelligent, cold-blooded document I'd ever signed. We both insisted on it. It laid out asset division based on contribution and duration of marriage. Crucially, it had a very specific clause about material non-disclosure of fact impacting reputation or joint venture standing. A lawyer's dream, or nightmare. The secret I was guarding wasn't a hidden mistress or a gambling problem. It was far more archaic and, in my circles, far more damaging. The Sterling-Atherton name wasn't pure Sterling. My grandfather, the true founder of the family's modest, initial wealth, wasn't the genteel investor my father described. He was an Ellis Island immigrant named Ryszard Kowalski, a name I'd spent decades erasing from every public record and family story. He'd anglicized it, created the myth, and I had simply maintained the fiction. To my family, it was a necessary edit to the narrative. To the old money institutions, it was proof of authenticity. Eleanor knew. I told her the week before we married. It was my only moment of true vulnerability, a test of trust. She simply looked at me, her expression unreadable, and said, "Everyone has a past, Richard. I'm marrying you." I took that as acceptance. It was, in hindsight, merely storage. She filed the information away, waiting for the optimal moment to use it. The conflict wasn't about love fading, it was about the foundation. We were finalizing the legal documents that would place the bulk of our joint liquid assets, about $40 million, into the Sterling-Atherton Foundation, which I would control, ensuring the family name continued its legacy, and crucially, protecting those assets from any future personal claims. Eleanor saw this as a move to marginalize her contribution. She wanted a 50-50 split of the foundation's voting shares. I offered 60-40, citing my majority financial input. She refused. The argument, a week prior to the gala, was clinical. "I built this structure with you, Richard," she stated, leaning across the mahogany desk. "I want parity, or I will ensure there is no structure left to argue over." I was calm. "Threatening me is beneath you, Eleanor. The agreement is final." I underestimated her. I saw a brilliant lawyer. She saw a vulnerable target. The moment Eleanor took the microphone, a low collective gasp rippled through the ballroom. My sister, Clara, woman whose entire social standing was based on the Sterling lineage, looked physically ill. Eleanor beamed. Richard is a man of remarkable dedication, a true American success story. But the foundation we celebrate tonight isn't just built on the Sterling name. She paused, letting the silence stretch, thick and terrible. It's built on a dream, a hustle, and the tenacity of an immigrant named Ryszard Kowalski. She then launched into a rapid, accurate retelling of my grandfather's history. The steerage passage, the garment factory job, the name change on the documents. She even produced a laminated copy of the original 1920 naturalization paper from her tiny handbag, a piece of evidence I thought was incinerated decades ago. The governor's face was a mask of professional neutrality. The Sterlings were aghast. The revelation itself wasn't scandalous in a moral sense. But in the brittle, traditional world of old wealth, it was reputationally devastating. It exposed the Sterling-Atherton name as a calculated fabrication, undermining its perceived legacy and, more importantly, its legitimacy as a charitable body rooted in historical family trust. I walked toward her, my pace slow and deliberate, a forced calm I didn't feel. I took the microphone back. "A colorful piece of family history, Eleanor," I stated, forcing a light, sarcastic chuckle. "We saved that one for the grandkids." I signaled the waiter to raise the volume on the classical music. Damage control. But the seed was planted. The next morning, the local social pages weren't focused on the foundation's launch. They were running the headline. Sterling-Atherton Foundation. Built on Polish fiction. Eleanor had vanished. She'd checked into a downtown luxury hotel, and less than 12 hours later, I received the email. Formal notice of divorce proceedings, requesting the maximum equitable distribution possible under the prenup's reputational damage clause, and specifically citing my material non-disclosure. I called Marcus Thorne, my longtime corporate attorney, not the family lawyer. I needed cold, hard strategy. I laid out the situation, the Kowalski reveal, the prenup clause, and the looming foundation transfer. Marcus, unflappable, simply said, "She played the long game, Richard. The foundation transfer was the catalyst. She didn't just file for divorce, she leveraged your brand. She's trying to invalidate the prenup on the grounds of deceit, claiming your false identity affected the joint venture's standing." I spent the next 72 hours in Marcus's office, not sleeping, just methodically gathering financial documents. My initial thought was panic. My subsequent thought was tactical defense. I had to prove that the Sterling name was a cosmetic detail, not a material fact that had inflated our joint assets. I had to show that Eleanor's contribution was primarily legal, not financial, and that my financial superiority was independent of the family myth. I instructed Marcus to do 3 things immediately. Freeze all foundation-related transfers. Contact my father's original immigration lawyer's firm to see if the name change was done fully legally, which thankfully it was. Draft a counterclaim based on Section 3, Clause B of the prenup. Malicious damage to partner's professional reputation or standing through non-essential disclosure. This wasn't a divorce. It was a corporate takeover bid played out in a courtroom. The irony was exquisite. 2 high-powered lawyers attempting to legally destroy the very partnership they had built. The months that followed were a cold war fought with subpoenas and discovery. Eleanor's lawyer, a notoriously aggressive litigator named Garrison, focused relentlessly on the deceit. They demanded proof that my initial capital wasn't somehow tainted or derived from some illegal Kowalski activity. It was a fishing expedition, but a clever one designed to muddy the waters. The climax arrived not in a courtroom, but in a tense, sealed deposition. It was just me, Eleanor, our 2 lawyers, and a stenographer. Eleanor sat across from me, a picture of controlled resentment, a stark contrast to the wife who'd helped me pick out cufflinks just months ago. Garrison grilled me for hours about the Kowalski name. I remained methodical. "Mr. Sterling, you deliberately withheld material information about your heritage. Didn't you feel that your wife, a partner in all your ventures, was entitled to the full truth?" Garrison asked, his voice booming for the benefit of the transcript. I disclosed the history to Eleanor prior to our marriage. I countered calmly, leaning forward. I deemed the name change an ancestral choice, legally complete and irrelevant to my current professional standing, which Eleanor, as a lawyer, should have been able to assess independently. "And the timing of her public disclosure? Right before the foundation launch?" Marcus chimed in, turning the tables. Eleanor spoke up before Garrison could stop her. "It was necessary to bring transparency to the foundation. If Richard wanted control, the truth needed to be on the table." It was a classic lawyer's deflection, presenting malice as morality. I let her finish, then I delivered the line Marcus had carefully prepped. I looked directly at Eleanor, not at the lawyers. Eleanor, you recall the Oakwood Trust that your late father established for you? Her eyes narrowed. The air thickened. This was a private detail, completely unrelated to our joint assets. Father's trust. The one that guarantees you $100,000 annually, required you to maintain the Windsor family name. That's why you always insisted on keeping Windsor as your professional middle name. That was the term of the trust. Use the name, get the money. I paused for the inevitable denial. And yet you told me, and everyone else, that your name was always Eleanor Marie Atherton. I pulled out a single sheet of paper. This is a certified copy of your father's will, signed Eleanor Windsor. You legally changed your name 3 weeks before we were married, and you never told me you were doing it simply to bypass your father's trust requirement, a trust you never disclosed. That, Eleanor, is the definition of material non-disclosure of fact impacting a joint venture. Specifically, the integrity of our partnership based on truth. The silence was total. Eleanor's face went white. She wasn't just guilty of non-disclosure. She was guilty of a strategic legal maneuver to secure her own independent income stream while simultaneously building our joint empire, and she'd hidden the entire financial mechanism from me. My secret was ancestral. Her secret was pure financial strategy. The difference? My lie was legally sound, a historical name change. Her lie was a legalistic maneuver designed to bypass a clause in a financial document she never disclosed to me. Her actions fit the prenup's definition of material non-disclosure, far more cleanly than mine did. Garrison asked for an immediate recess. The game had changed. Eleanor's attempt to use my secret to void the prenup had blown up spectacularly, using a clause that now pointed directly at her. The deposition was the turning point. The judge, presented with both non-disclosures and the prenuptial agreement, ruled that both parties had contributed equally to the breakdown of spousal trust, but neither offense was sufficient to void the original, clearly defined prenup. In the end, we settled. Not because we found affection again, but because we both realized the catastrophic cost of a protracted court battle where two high-powered lawyers were using every loophole to cannibalize each other's assets. The final decree followed the prenup almost exactly. Eleanor received a fair settlement based on her contribution and duration of marriage, a significant sum, but nothing close to the $20 million she'd hoped for. The Sterling-Atherton Foundation remained, though it was delayed for a year, and I retained majority control. The Kowalski name was, ironically, no longer a secret. It was a footnote in a very expensive divorce filing. Eleanor and I never spoke again. She moved to London, taking a lucrative position at a rival firm. I heard, through the legal grapevine, that she was very successful and very alone. I was left with the brownstone, the foundation, and a reputation that was now slightly more complex, a blend of old money aspiration and immigrant hustle. The Sterlings initially kept their distance, offended by the spectacle. But I had survived, and in my circles, survival often counts more than dignity. The final lesson wasn't about the money or the name. It was about the terrifying duality of a strategic partnership. Eleanor and I had always valued strategy, legal precision, and the art of the deal above all else. When the marriage failed, we simply turned those weapons on each other. There was no passionate anger, only cold, methodical dismantling. Sometimes, the people you trust the most are simply the ones who know exactly where to find the detonator switch. I lost a wife, but I gained a hard-earned truth. In high-stakes relationships, a secret isn't just a personal burden. It's an uninsured liability. I kept the foundation. I kept the house, and I kept the lesson. And every time I look at the polished Sterling-Atherton plaque, I smile a little. Richard Sterling might sound better, but Ryszard Kowalski, the man who knew how to start from nothing and survive the storm, that's the name that truly embodies who I am now. The next time I build a partnership, I won't just ask about assets and liabilities. I'll ask about secrets.